Mic check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K Collector, and yesterday I put out a video talking about how some of the games, really only about two or three of the games in my collection, are fake. And I got a comment under that video from a viewer who said that reproductions basically don't work for them for investing purposes, um, because they were someone who invested in video games. And I wanted to talk about that as we come to the end of 2024, because I think there's a good number of people who genuinely view video games as an investment, as some way of storing value. They view video games as something that they can buy today and hopefully sell for more later on down the road. Because I guess in their mind, they view video games as something that's going to continue to go up in value. Now, from my perspective, there's a lot of things that you can invest in, a lot of things that you can invest in that are better than video games, that are a lot less risky than video games. For sure, you can invest in stocks. Obviously, you can invest in real estate. You can invest in precious metals. Even art. There's a lot of things that you can invest in outside of video games. Now, if you've already invested in all of those things, and if your portfolio is pretty, uh, broad, and you've got all types of investments, and you have a passion for video games, and you want to dive into video games, then by all means, I mean, do what you want to do with your money. But there's a few risks that come into play when trying to utilize video games as an investment. The first is obviously running into fakes. If you're a person who's buying expensive video games, this is the fake copy of Agane that I shared with everyone yesterday. And a real copy of Agane typically goes for, like, loose cart, as I said yesterday, typically goes for about, anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500. Metal Warriors is not as, I would say, rare as Hagane, but it's definitely up there. Metal Warriors, loose cart, right now, a lot of loose carts, like if you check price charting, it'll show that a loose cart goes for somewhere in the neighborhood of 370. But when you look at the copies of Metal Warriors that are selling at that price, most of them have significant label damage. They're, a chunk of the label has been torn out, or something, it just doesn't have a label at all. There's usually some real severe label damage. When you find copies of Metal Warriors that have their label intact, their original label intact, because a lot of these copies are being relabeled now. If you find a copy of Metal Warriors with an original label, loose cart, you're probably going to pay closer to like $600 or $700 for that copy. And when it comes to investing in video games, I think it's something that for a lot of people who are new to the space, I think it can be something that's very glamorized. Um, it's something that seems cool because unlike other investments, you can actually show off your investment, right? If you have a large video game collection, you can build a room, you can build some cases, you can display all the games. And for anyone who knows about video games, if they walk into your room and they see all these titles, they're going to know, wow, you've got a lot of expensive titles. But there's a lot of risk and there's a lot of danger in investing in video games because video game prices fluctuate sometimes just as heavily as certain stocks do. And because the video game industry is continuing to evolve, you never really know what's going to happen 5 to 10 years from now, especially as we start to move closer and closer to AI. Now, in my opinion, I personally think that video game prices, especially the prices for rare and expensive games, I feel like those prices are here to stay. I do not think that there is going to be some type of bubble that pops and sends video game prices crashing, because video games are not like, some type of, e-token or e-coin or something like that. Video games actually have utility. You can put the video game into a console and play it. And by playing it, it provides the player with countless hours of entertainment and enjoyment. And depending on the game, it could also provide the player with countless hours of nostalgia, um, and all other things that come along with it. The music that comes along with it, there's a lot of utility in video games. And because of that, I think that's the reason why you're not going to see a massive drop off in video game prices. On the flip side of that coin, I do not think that you are going to see the type of price inflation in video games like we saw 4 years ago, because you have to understand that it took a cataclysmic series of events to cause the prices of video games to skyrocket like the way they did 4 years ago. Now, also, you have to understand that those same circumstances that caused the video games to skyrocket, it caused everything to skyrocket. The cost of real estate is way more expensive today than it was before 2020. The cost of certain stocks are way more expensive today than they were before 2020. So we've seen massive price inflation across a number of goods, products, and industries. But it's all about what you've been invested in the longest and what you've already been doing, where you've already been putting your money. And I'm no investment expert. I'm no one to guide you on investments, but there are probably things that you've already been invested in outside of video games. If you've never been invested in video games, there are probably other things that you've been invested in that are probably worth more of your time pursuing, because you're more familiar with those things, because you understand those things better, and you have a history there. Treating video games as an investment requires research, just like any other investment. You have to know about the systems, you have to know about the generations, you have to know about the consoles, you have to know about which games had what type of cultural impact. And for gamers, if you're a gamer, a lot of this information is going to be second nature because you're a gamer. So, do I think it's easier for gamers and those who've been collecting to treat video games like an investment? Yes. But what I would hate to see is for someone who's brand new to retro video games or video game collecting to see or hear someone who's treating video games like some type of investment and then turn around and go out and buy a bunch of games that aren't really worth anything. Because just like the stock market, you want to make sure that you're buying quality stuff. Running out and buying a bunch of Wii shovelware just to have your shelves full, or buying a bunch of games that have no value, really isn't going to be doing you any favors, because not only are you going to be wasting money. See, here's the thing. If you buy a bunch of like, like low quality stocks, the good thing is that in the stock market, at least you'll be able to turn around and sell those games. I mean, sell those stocks. You can, with a click of a button, you could turn around, sell those stocks, and even if you take somewhat of a loss, you can still easily turn around and sell those things. If you buy a bunch of low quality games, or games with low value, or games that no one wants, not only did you waste money by stacking your shelves with shovelware, the worst part is that you won't even be able to sell that stuff because no one's going to want to buy it. And I think sometimes what collectors do is they'll go out and they'll say, man, I got 30 games for $100, but they got a bunch of mahjong games, or they got a bunch of like, you know, um, at pet simulator games or animal simulator games or whatever type of game it is. And don't get me wrong, simulation games are great to play, but if you're collecting them for value, you just wasted a bunch of money, because no one's going to buy those from you in years' time unless there's some major pop culture event that causes those games to shoot up in price. And I think that's the danger for a lot of people who treat video games like an investment. They equate quantity, or the number of games, with value, and that's not the way it works. You can have a person with a collection of 500 games that's worth $100,000, and you could have a person with a collection of 1,000 games that's worth $8,000. It just depends on what types of games you have in your collection and what the value of those games are. Now, this is not a video to make anyone go out and spend $400 and $500 on one game. It's not what this video is about. This video is about letting you know that if you're going to treat video games like an investment, if you're going to look at video games like an investment, you have to do your research. You have to, utilize the tools that will kind of help you know what the trends of game prices are. Tools like price charting can help you. Apps like GameMy can help you. But even then, there's no guarantee. And you could really wind up spending a lot of money, taking up a lot of space in your home with a bunch of stuff that no one will want. I am almost positive that there's a good chunk of my games that 10 years from now, no one will want but me because they're games that I particularly enjoy playing. But for me, as a collector, as a gamer, the value doesn't matter to me, um, because I enjoy collecting the games. I'm a very specific niche type of collector. Metal Warriors, Hagane, action games, hack and slash games, run and gun shooters. That's my niche. I'm not gonna go out and buy, Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut because it's an expensive game, because I don't particularly care for that fighting game. It's not a fun fighting game to me. Marvel vs. Capcom is a fun fighting game, but it's a fraction of the price of Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut. You've got that bowling game on the N64, which is also an expensive game. I'm not gonna buy that game just because it's expensive, because it's probably lame. It's a lame bowling game. I'm not gonna do that. So you gotta just stay true to you, buy the games that you like, buy the games that you want to play, and if you can find a balance and buy games that you like playing, but also have value, I think that's the sweet spot if you're looking at it from an investment standpoint. Because at least at the end of the day, if no one wants to buy those games from you, you can still play them. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think about video games as an investment. I don't really think investing in video games makes sense, especially in 2024. It's not a wise move. I don't think it's something that you should do. Um, a lot of other things you can invest in, a lot of other things you can spend your money on. And if you have 10, 20, $30,000, go check the stock market out. Go look at Bitcoin. Go look at, other things that you can spend your money on. And if you have more than that, 100,000, 200,000, start looking at some real estate. Um, we may see prices of things jump in 2025.